There's a question which is maybe more of a comment, maybe a rhetorical question. But it is this: how can anyone experience anything outside of perception? Well, have you ever had a dream at night? You ever dreamt that you were in some situation where you were seeing a specific situation with other people and it felt completely real, and then you woke up and you realized you had just dreamt it? So that situation you were seeing in your dream that seemed completely real, were you actually seeing that with your physical senses? Were you hearing it with your physical ears? Or was it all beyond the senses? So how can anyone experience anything beyond the senses? Well, through extrasensory perception. And it takes various forms, but I'm primarily talking for spiritual people. And as spiritual people, we realize there's a spiritual side to life. There's a spiritual world beyond the material world. And this is not, for most spiritual people, it's not a theory. It's not a belief. We experience intuitively the reality of it. So I would say that there are, of course, sensory perception where you can, I have met people, for example, who could see an energy field around people's physical bodies. And they saw this with their physical eyes, you know. And I actually find that very easy to explain because science even tells us that there are energy waves beyond what we can see with our physical eyes. Right? So right now, you're looking at me, you're most likely seeing my physical body. But I have an energy field around my body that you are not seeing. But the energy field is there. I mean, these are energies. So they are hitting your eyes. The energy field, it's hitting your eyes right now. Why are you not seeing it? Because the light that comes into your eyes goes through a process in your whole visual apparatus. And some of the light rays that are hitting the eyes are filtered out before they hit the part of the brain that sees. In other words, your eyes are really not seeing me. Your eyes are just receiving certain light rays that comes from the screen. And what is seeing a person sitting here talking is your brain. In your brain, there's an image displayed. It's like being displayed on a screen inside your skull. Right? So your eyes are not, they don't know what light rays they're passing on. But in your brain, this is translated into, oh, this is a person sitting there talking. But in order to display this image of a person, you don't need to see the energy field around my body. You just need to see my physical body. So even though that energy, those light rays are hitting your eyes and being transferred to the brain, they're filtered off before it hits that screen where you are seeing me. So extrasensory perception can be, there are some people that don't have that filter, so they see the energy rays from the energy field instead of just seeing the energy rays from the physical body. But beyond that, to me, extrasensory perception is first of all intuitive perception, which is simply an experience that doesn't go through the physical senses. And that's why I started out with the example of a dream. You know, you can actually have a vision. You can even, with your eyes closed, have a very detailed vision that is not just a dream. You are actually perceiving a realm beyond the material. And that is what is the basis for tens of thousands of years. People have had mystical, intuitive experiences. And there are millions of examples of these experiences that people have had. And I would say that most people who are open to the spiritual path, they've had some kind of mystical, intuitive experience that is more real than what we see with our senses. And therefore, it's not a matter of believing something. It's an inner knowing, but it's really an experience. So, I know that there are people who haven't had this. I have met people who haven't had it. But I think actually that there are many people who have had these experiences, they just don't know what it is. Because look at how we are brought up. We are brought up to deny such experiences. Many, many children actually have various spiritual, mystical, extrasensory experiences. But when they try to talk to their parents about it, they say, oh, it's just something you're imagining. And so therefore you create the filter, you filter it out. It's not necessary. And so I think there's a lot of people that have had these experiences, they just don't know what it is, because we are not receiving any help to how do we deal with these experiences, how do we explain it, how do we see it as important. But then many of us find the spiritual path later in life, and now we realize it is actually important, and our intuition is very, very important, because it's really what gives us a sense of meaning to life. I remember reading, I read a lot of philosophy in my life about worldly philosophers. And I remember reading this book about a group of philosophers in the, I think, 1700s called the empiricists. And the empiricists were saying that the only reliable information we have access to comes through our physical senses. And only what we can detect with our physical senses is real, and anything beyond this doesn't exist. And this was, of course, what became taken by scientific materialists, who also want to say that whatever we can't detect with our senses, with our material senses, is not real. There's nothing beyond the material universe. The irony, and this was what I was reading in this philosophy book, the irony is that the idea that there is nothing beyond our physical senses is not empiricist, because we can't see with our physical senses that there's nothing beyond the physical senses, right? So therefore we can't see with our physical senses that only what we see with our senses is real. Therefore, empiricism is a grand self-contradiction, because only through an idea that's beyond the physical senses could we get the idea of empiricism to begin with. The same thing with scientific materialism. So, this of course opens up a whole other can of worms, because like with dreams, were we seeing something real in a dream? Well, perhaps we were actually. You can dream about an actual situation that took place or hasn't taken place yet. Many people have had dreams of a situation, and then a few days later they experience the same situation, déjà vu. But of course, many times dreams are just produced in the mind, and we can have experiences that are just produced in the mind, and then we can have some experiences where we actually go outside our normal state of mind, and that's what I call a mystical, intuitive experience, and experience something that isn't produced by the mind, because we tune in to something that is beyond the mind. So I'm not saying that all experiences that are beyond the senses are real, but some of them are. And so I don't know if that answers the question for the person who asked it, because my experience has been that if you are into materialism, if you believe in materialism, then no argument is really going to work. So I'm really not trying to argue. I'm just trying to say that most spiritual people, we have had these experiences, and we know they show us something that is real, and we know it's beyond the physical senses.